So this is maybe 20, 21, 23. I'm starting to lose track. This is a video that we're making for the specific purposes of a course called Social Work with Victims of Abuse. But today's video, I think, relates to my other courses as well. I'm going to talk about journaling today, or creative doodling, but I'll use the word journaling because that's a more familiar word for people. And I'm going to pop up and down because I get all excited. So this is my own way of journaling here, and I'm going to show you all different kinds of bitses and bitses. I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of workshops now on journaling for creativity, journaling for healing, journaling for research, journaling for professional development. There's lots and lots of ways we can use this basic kind of format or form. And so I'll start, always in Buddhism they say start where you are, so I'm going to start where I am. So every day I journal, and this is the kind of format that I use. I'll start at the beginning of my binder. I now have, for, 22 years or so, I've been journaling. And I like this style of binder for my own self in that you can start the new journal with an intention. So you can say, oh, this next while is going to be about healing, or this next while is going to be about gardening, or whatever you think are one or two things when you imagine the near future, and you can start with that. You can also just keep adding or subtracting as the era goes on. This, for me, this width of binder is now maybe 2, 3, 4 months worth of journaling, and I will now open the journal. And I also like this format in that I can stash things here if I wish to. And what I also do is at the beginning of my journals, I have one of these kind of envelopes. I knew that summer was going to be, as it always is for me here, and Carlene, in fact, has been a co-conspirator. These are all in the era that we've been working together. These are some of from the plants we've purchased. These are the little labels that come with those plants. And this is how I've been spending, it's now almost the end of June, and this is how I've been spending all my money and a lot of my time, and it's all outside. Now every year for the last 14 years, I have an envelope like this in the journals from last summer, the summer before, the summer before. So if I need to, I can, and I have, along the way, gone back and said, what was the name of that plant? Or a friend says, I love how this looks. I'm like, it's called, I think, silver something. I'll go and look, and I can go and look and email them and say, here's what this is, and here's how this plant does best in the world. At different points along the way, if I'm going and doing a lot of conferences or workshops, I might have a second or a third or a fourth one here, where I'm putting in one with receipts. So those of you who are professionals working on contract gigs, you could consider putting an envelope like this, and all the receipts for the work that you're doing could go in as you go along. Or business cards, if you're getting business cards from folk if you're at a conference. So then, the other thing I'll draw your attention to is, I like to use different colors of paper, and I use stickies, and I use different forms of markers, oil pastels, kids' crayons, and I kind of doodle and I make lists, and sometimes I'll print off something. If I don't know if you can see close in on this face, but this is what I feel like lately. I'm kind of this old gray cat who can hear a lot of stuff going on, but there's not much I can do about it. So that's that.
Like the mom version of this cat.
The mom version of this one, that's right. So this is also a place where you can be outrageous, where you can be irregular, where you can be rude. When I get bills, sometimes I take the bill itself and I write all over the bill in frustration. Something happened this morning. There was a product advertised on Facebook, and it said something like $30 for the product. And you got a discount if you got 2, so I ordered 2. And then it went from $30 to something like $75 because there's $15 shipping, and then there's tax, and then there also was a translation from Canadian money to American money. I was like, damn, it ends up being $100 for this thing. I am so pissed off. So I print that out and I'll put it in here. And I'll write, note to self, in the future when they say something is 30, double check, is it Canadian money? Right? So you can kind of go on little rants and work out your day-to-day mundane stresses, right? I can also, through my lists in here, I can identify things what ingredients would I need to achieve this project or this product or this outcome, or why is it that I tell myself I want to make more time for this or that person or that learning journey, but I don't actually achieve it? What interferes with me achieving that? So I make lists and I ask myself questions, and I've been doing this for over 20 years, and I've kind of got, I'm going to ask Steven Spielberg in a minute to take the camera and put it over here, if you can, Steven. Or Tuba, that's my real name. Over here we have my buckets of stickies and pretty papers. And you can show people how many I have, and I've got stickies of little monsters and happy faces and all kinds of different paper, and these are my toys. On days when I feel sad, I can go to the dollar store or someplace like that and spend $5 on stickies and come home and play with my stickies and kind of make myself feel a little bit better. It's kind of like medicine. My husband would comment before, when he was alive, he would comment on, why do you need 1,000 pens? Why do you need so many pens and markers? And my response would be, because I am, this is cheaper than beer. This has less calories than binge eating.
No sugar.
No sugar. This is more legal than drugs, right? These are things that people can have in their lives that they own, they're in control of. At 4 in the morning, when I feel sad or I've had a bad dream and I wake up and I'm unsettled, or I have anxiety about what's happening the next day, I can sit here and play with my toys. That's how I would say to myself, I'm going to play with my markers and my crayons and my stickies. And while you still have the camera free and liberated, you can come over here and see I've got also different kinds. These are fancy crayons. These are the grown-up crayons. These are a lot of money compared to the dollar store crayons, but they have rich, deep pigmentation, and they also can be smeary. So when I'm in the mood to be all smeary, with a little bit of water, this spreads. These are watercolor crayons, and I have highlighters, and I have all different kinds of resources to help me express my feelings. Over here I have gelantos. Gelantos, again, are a more kind of fancy, expensive pigmentation. And you see, they're kind of like lipstick. So when I'm in the mood to be all smeary and goopy, I can play with these. I also have dozens and dozens of stencils, and I can put those on. So a stencil of a dragon, or a stencil of a monster, or a stencil of a shovel or something, and then I can put words all around that and kind of process my feelings, and it makes me feel a little bit more lucid. And then when I go to those conversations the next day, let's say if a co-worker and I have had a dispute, I can process all my feelings, I can distill it to one idea, one thought, one priority, one request, and I can send a concise email that is more sophisticated and more nuanced than my original yelling tantrum might have been 2 days before had I not journaled. So the reason I'm showing you this for a course on social work with victims of abuse is many times victims of abuse have thousands of feelings and thoughts and little flittering bits or deep sobs. And journaling can be a really profound and awesome space and place and way to process all of that. And it also gives us as therapists a really kind of wide open space to say, let's talk about safety in your life, for example, and boundaries. Many times people will say, oh, I can't journal because I'm afraid my husband will look at my stuff. And then we can use a whole session, we could just talk about What does that mean that your husband doesn't respect your privacy? How could we change that? What would be involved in having a conversation with him about it's okay for each of you not to have secrets from each other, but to have private space from each other. No two people need to know each other's every single thought and detail and glitch and itch and bitchiness. It's okay to have some thoughts that are still private as you work your way through. And so that again, many times people who've been abused, they've been taught that their rights, their privacy, their boundaries, their pacing doesn't matter. The perpetrator's pacing and rights matter 100%. Can also just talk about boundaries in terms of a family. My own personal beliefs, my own values are that everyone in the family should have those rights and that respect. And we'll talk in a minute about some of the workshops I've done with children. I've had the great good fortune to work with the Community Arts Council and to do journaling with little kids. And it's so fun and different to work with little kids. And they've tended to be middle-class kids because the Community Arts Council, I think, charges $45 for the 3-hour workshop. So, of course, that tends to be more middle-class families that can afford that, to drop off 2 kids for $90 and leave them with us for a few hours. So I'll come back to that in a minute. I'll ask Tuba to put me back over here. So the other thing that I think is kind of worth talking about, just even the process, we were just saying that in a family, everybody in the family should have the intrinsic right to some privacy. A mom, for example, has the right to say to her kids, don't touch mommy's crayons. Those are mommy's crayons. I don't think that that's awful or selfish. I think that's wholesome to teach every single member of the family that we all are intrinsically entitled by birthright to have boundaries and limits. Mm-hmm. And these are mommy's crayons, and that's the way that is. If you lose your crayons, sucks to be you, kid. Mommy maybe will share with you, but maybe not, because those are mommy's crayons, right? Some people find that sort of shocking, and I think it's good to have, you could say, individuation, that everybody is entitled to a box with a lock or a room with a lock. I hear women tell me things like, even when I go to the bathroom, or even when I'm taking a bath, my kids will walk in the bathroom while I'm in the bathtub. And I think that's astonishing. I think that's outrageous, because it teaches kids that you can just take or do anything to mommy, which I don't think is wholesome. I think that kind of diminishes mommy. I think it's okay for kids to learn, oh, maybe you could wait 5 minutes and then ask mom, you know, unless the house is burning down. And it's a really useful space, even before you actually do journaling with people, to talk about all that other stuff. What would it mean if every paycheck mom took $10, assuming she gets paid every 2 weeks, let's say, if she took $10 or $5, and that's only for mommy's stickies, or for mommy's pretty paper, or for mommy's journaling crayons, right? Mm-hmm. Again, in some families, moms, and I'm not even just talking poor families here, I'm talking families sometimes where they can very well afford that mom have those resources, but still mom, if there's any disposable income, 100% of it goes to the kids. That's a little bit, I think, unbalanced. So, having said that, so that's my journaling stuff. I personally journal every day, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for hours. When I'm going through something really painful or distressing, I used to, let's say, binge eat. 35 years ago I might binge eat. Or even earlier than that I might, not often, but I might have binge drank if I felt really deeply sad and lost. And now I binge journal. And I kind of give myself total permission for that, because, hey, what of it? It's better for me maybe to spend 3 hours going on and on and on and on about my feelings than to maybe not process those feelings at all, and they kind of build up in us, whether it's grief or rage. My belief is if you don't ever get a chance to process them in a wholesome way, they just kind of congeal inside you. And then maybe someday you're at a party and someone says, pass the salt, and you completely lose it. Why do you think I should pass you the salt? What do you think, I'm your slave? What? It's much better. I kind of make the assumption that every day in our lives there's things that could hurt us. Microaggressions or micro absences or wishes or dreams that got a little bit squished that day. And you know how you see a bird kind of go like this and they fluff themselves out? And they peck and they clean the bugs off their feathers? Or you see cats do that kind of... For me, journaling is that I would like to believe that I can get my brain and my spirit and my soul and my heart and my day-to-day in a better way because I do this. I believe it makes me a better person all the way around. So, because as I said in this video, I'm doing something a little different than in some of the other ones. I'm speaking to the students from Social Work with Victims of Abuse. I'm also speaking to the students from Family Counseling. I'm speaking to students who are doing master's level research and who might be using their journal as field notes. So we'll talk about that in a bit. But because I'm offering this video to diverse potential audiences, I might sound a little over here and over there and over here and over there. I give myself permission to do that. So that's my own personal way of doing journaling. And I'll put this away for a sec. And I'll come back. And now I'm going to do a little bit of a show and tell of different formats that might work well for different people. Now this journal here is titled Organized as Fuck. And what's kind of cool about this one, as I said, that some of these formats work for different people. So this could be if you, journaling doesn't really sound like something you would want to do, it isn't really your thing. This one here comes with little inserts and it has little questions and it has, somewhere in this pile of stuff, it has, let's say, day-to-day prescriptions for you. Answer these 3 questions. That comes as a companion to this, called Organized as Fuck. And then there's ones like this. This was one that was really, really celebrated by Oprah. You may have heard of her. She's got some shows and stuff. This was Oprah's Journal of the Year kind of idea. And this one has inspirational quotes and inspirational words, and it tracks each day. You have 3 things. I'll turn it around so I could read you it. Each day has, they're called soul prompts. What does your soul need today? And then it's got schedule. What's one thing that'll light you up today? And then 3 things that are doable today. And what is one thing you want to stop doing? Okay. So that gives you an example of, let's say, a very pre-formatted kind of journal. And this is called What I Will Do to Feel the Way I Want to Feel, the Desire Map Planner. So that's another kind of journal that you can get out there in the world. And this one, this is more of a, you find these in kind of hippy-dippy stores. This is called Earth Warrior Journal. And this one has beautiful paintings in it and images, and you're meant to look at the art piece and kind of meditate when you look at the images that are in here. They're quite beautiful. And then there's an inspirational quote and so on. So more images and inspirational quotes. Look at how beautiful this is. Yeah. I'll kind of tell you a story about this. In a previous video, we talked about doing art therapy and healing and so on with men. And one of the groups, one of the first groups we did at a place called Activators, we had, let's say, 10 men who, Activators is for men who've struggled with the law. And often they've also struggled with issues around poverty or unemployment. So they have multiple struggles. Anyway, so the way we set up those groups was we had an Indigenous woman artist, an Indigenous man artist, a professional artist, and then myself as a creativity person. Our cat is doing one of her famous groovy moves right now. Oh, she's going to undo it. I can't stop laughing when she does her groovy move. There she is. She stops as soon as the camera went on. You're like, oh no, That's my secret groovy move. Funny. So we were doing these workshops, and our first time there, the artist, her name is Carla, she took some beautiful, beautiful hardcover journals that were quite expensive, and she did original art on the cover of all 10 of them. And then inside she wrote some inspirational things. And as the weeks went on, we found the men weren't using their journals. And then when we asked them, how come you're never using your journal? None of you are using your journal. They're like, they're so handsome. They're so beautiful. We can't touch them. So there's an interesting thing that, she would stop again. She stopped again as soon as I made eye contact with her. She's so funny. Mm-hmm. Cats, they're just magic. They're their own peculiar magic. Anyway, so you have to ask yourself, if you're the type of person that you're not going to ever write in your $55 journal because it's way too beautiful, don't buy that journal, because what you want to be doing in your journal is writing. You want to be doodling and making a mess, and even like, putting handprints and spill some coffee and make designs with the coffee. You want to like, you want to grunt and get right into your journal and make a mess sometimes, because humans' emotions are entirely messy sometimes. They're contradictory, they swirl, they're lumpy, they're clumpy. You can feel like you have emotional diarrhea, emotional constipation. Just get that shit out of you and put it in a journal. So don't buy an expensive journal with original art on the cover if that's not going to work for you. That's part of why I like using a binder like that, because when I'm out in the world, I'm not going to carry that big journal with me everywhere I go. What I do when I leave the house is I take 2 or 3 sheets of paper and I put them in my pouch. So then if I'm stuck somewhere in a restaurant waiting for somebody, or I'm at the doctor's office waiting, or I'm on the bus and I have this idea of something I want to work on, it's all very beautiful because I've got my 3 sheets of paper, 4 sheets of paper. Then at the end of the day I take those sheets out and I can put them in my binder. So that process works for me. My husband, who was a professional writer and who published 8 books, he used to have just a tiny little notepad about this big, just those, I think they were 55 cents for each one. And he liked that type of journal because he could just put that in his pocket. And if it got full of rain, or if he was riding his bike and it got dirt on him and got it all wrinkled, that's fine, right? For him, that worked. So each person has to ponder what would realistically work for me, and you may have to experiment with different kinds and different formats. So what I want to just continue showing you those prefab kinds of journals. This is an art therapist log, so this might be good for a professional who's out in the world. And this has daily tasks of a professional therapist. And these could be, let's say, your notes after you did a workshop or after you worked with a specific client. And this art therapist log. And this would be more factual in the sense of, met with Jane. 3 issues we discussed were family, depression, paychecks, right? So it's more specific and concise. I have, what else do I have to show you? I have so many beautiful things. I'm a very lucky person. I'm like a millionaire-ess. This one is for kids. And I'm going to talk more about kids before we finish this video. But this is one for kids. And you might think kids don't like journaling. But as I said, I've been doing these multiple workshops with little kids. And I mean little kids like this tall. They're just little kids. And in each group that I did them, there might be one this tall, and then one this tall, and this tall, and this tall. And they might be, half girls, half boys. So I have actual lived evidence that kids can adore journaling, and that every kid can have their own way of doing their journaling. You may just have to get them started and get them inspired. So this is a one to be like a starter kit for an older kid, I think. Then not the little ones, more like this. And in this one, as you'll see, it has little thoughts and quotes, and it's got creative spaces, and it's got questions and little challenges and images and affirmations and so on. And so this is a little gift. I think this would be about $10 if you bought it. And it would be brilliant as a gift for a kid that you don't know what to get. Because even if a kid is journaling already, people who journal never have enough journal stuff, right? So just saying, if y'all wanted to buy me crayons and markers and pens for Christmas, don't say to yourself, oh no, she's got too many already. Yeah, it's okay. You can give me one. I like them. I use them. So there's one. Now this one is, today will be full of wonderful things. And this journal, again, comes with month by month, and it's got, open this one. This is one that must have gotten added to my pile more recently. This has like day-to-day, so it's a little bit more like a day planner. So again, for people who are shy and haven't really done this before, you could do your journaling here. And if I could also show you these, there's now, oh, this is the cat's. Oh, sorry, yeah. So you can now buy a dozen or 10 dozen different shapes of these little stickies. So there's little ones and big ones and so on. So let's say you wanted to use your stickies as a type of code. Yeah, so this says always on the agenda. This is a heart. There's some that are the shape of little flags. There's little ones and then even littler ones. And I saw some recently that look like camel background, like war, right? So what you could do with these is you can have your day planner stuff in here, but on these pages where it's more blank, you like things I would love to do on the weekend, or things I would love my boss to do, or things I would love to do with my kids, right? So you can kind of journal in little tidbits, little da-da, because some people will say, oh, I don't have time. This is another thing. Here's what I'm going to tell you on that, because I've heard that at a lot of the workshops I've done. People say, I don't have time for fooling around with stuff like this. I just can't even fit that in. It's unreasonable for you to ask me for something like that. And I'll say to you, tell you what, over the next 10 years, there's people who'll end up having a very time-expensive divorce because they didn't figure out their feelings and they became a bit of a mess. There'll be people who end up yelling at their boss at work and they get fired. And that was not very time efficient. Or there'll be kids who end up fighting with each other in the schoolyard and they get kicked out of school, or a boy or a girl who hit someone and get into big trouble. Mm-hmm. There's many ways that humans make their own pain, or they amplify their own pain. And I would suggest to you that over a lifetime, maybe you don't have time tomorrow, but over a lifetime, if you kind of sneak this into your day-to-day, I would suggest to you that you'll save time. 1,000 times. I've been journaling, and I didn't show that part of my own journal, but I reread my journals. About once a week I'll go back over the last week or two, and you'll see I put stickies here, pink stickies and green stickies. Those are reminders to myself to go back and fix that, or do that, or send that email, or make that phone call, or purchase socks because it's getting to be winter. Oh my God, I need to remember to buy laundry soap, right? Through every morning, saying to myself, what do I hope to achieve this day? What are going to be some obstacles in my day? And how am I going to figure my way around those obstacles? So there's some question like that. And then at the end of each day, I say to myself, what am I proud of today? What could I have done differently? What did I learn? And what do I want to do different tomorrow? Or what's tomorrow going to bring? That kind of thing. What tends to happen, the more you do that, the longer you do that, is you kind of organize your thoughts and your feelings, and I believe you save time. Because often humans waste a lot of time with nonsense, where later on they think, why was I even spending the whole day with that person? I don't like that person. I don't enjoy that person. They give me a headache. Every time after I leave that person, I want to go have 6 pills, 5 drinks of vodka, and lie down for 2 hours. Well, if you were journaling, then what you might come to a place of, before you waste another day with that person, is the next time that person invites me to their house for supper, I'm going to say no. Whoa, just saved a lot of time right there. Humans do a lot of stuff in a day-to-day way that they're truly not getting joy from or learning from or being rewarded from. There's a lot of stuff people do simply because someone told them or because someone asked them or because it's the right thing to do. And I think the more you can get more in tune with yourself and realize you are entitled to have boundaries and limits and barriers and all kinds of, let's say, self-esteem affirming protocols, your daily protocols for yourself. The other thing I find journal on a professional level is conflicts. So as you can imagine in my life, I have, let's say 100 students a year are in my life. So let's say a student and I have some kind of a tension, even just mild tension. So later, after our conversation, I'll use Carlene as my example. Let's say Carlene and I have some kind of a awkwardness. Let's say I've said to Carlene, I'll meet you in the mall at 12. And Carlene said back to me, sure, okay, I'll meet you in the mall at 12. Tomorrow? Tomorrow. So I go to the mall, it's 1:30, no Carlene, right? So, I might journal, because I've got my 3 sheets of paper, I'm in the mall, I had a coffee, got my table, pulled my purple sparkly pen, and I write, I think we said we would meet at 12, but I'm not certain. Maybe I didn't clarify which mall. She might be at, oh, shit, maybe she's at Pine Center and I'm at Parkwood. Wow, okay, right? So, I journal, I ask myself some questions of where could I have misunderstood this, da-da-da-da. Then I see Carlene or I phone her and I say, so Carlene, what happened there? And she says, well, you said to meet you at Canadian Tire. I don't think I said that, right? So we have a week later, we have another thing, I journal another thing, and then Carlene says, it's never me, Sai, it's always you, you're always confused. And then I think, and I look at my journals and I realize, no, because I started documenting it, right? So I give you that as like a silly example, but at the same time in life, there can be moments where really either you're just, not fully clear on what each of you is doing. You haven't defined your terms. So I say, I'll meet you at the mall, but I haven't taken responsibility to say which mall and where in the mall, right? So let's say that conflict or disharmony, or let's say simmer, it continues between me and Carlene. So what I would do now, maybe the third time is, this time, I'm going to put it in writing. I'm going to say, Carlene, I'm really excited to meet you in the Parkwood Mall, in the food court, closest to the New York Fries area, maybe the second table, tomorrow at 1 o'clock. Is that what we'd agreed upon, Carlene?
And I say yes.
Right, right? So I go there tomorrow, she doesn't show up. I can start getting ready to fire her. If she's a student, to say, we're really having some problems here. Or if she's my coworker, I can say, maybe you got a lot of stress in your life, but maybe from now on, I'll just see you when I see you, right? Like with a coworker. My point being that sometimes you really do need to challenge and track over periods of time what's really going on in a situation. And at first, it may be me that I wasn't clear. It might be me that I got mixed up on the time. Or, right, so you want to open the possibility, but you want to track it. That would be if I was the professional with this kind of a journal, where I might have a sticky that I'd put Carlene, 1 o'clock, the mall, and then the next sticky, and the next thing. So then I could pull my 3 stickies and say, well, June 10th, I said da-da-da-da-da. June 15th, I said da-da-da-da-da. June 20th, I said da-da-da-da. So that's 3 episodes where we've clearly been miscommunicating. What are your thoughts on that, Carlene?
I think I'm not very good. I think I better look for a new job.
Or get a new watch or keep a day planner. Or let's not even do any of that. How about when we meet, we meet. Or let's not even meet. Let's just interact through email, right? You can start to...
Don't call me, we'll call you.
Right. But that seems like a silly thing. But there are many, many situations in life where until you start to track a pattern, you're not really positive and you can't prove to another person, a third person. So let's say we are co-workers and you keep brushing me off and not being organized or something, and we have to get a task done, right? I could eventually go to my boss and say, well, I've been tracking this in my journal. I wrote this, I said this happened, and I'm wondering, maybe you shouldn't put Carlene and I on a team. Maybe Carlene is a team to herself. And I can track it, right? And then it makes me feel a little less crazy, a little less stressed, and it gives me a strategy towards making it better, okay? So here's another journal just to show you. This is, I just pick them up as I go along. Let's see what this one is about. Yeah, again, this is more the just sort of blank, hippy-dippy one, the old-fashioned one. And many people like to have these kind of strings and bells and whistles on their journals. And this one, I'm a good girl with bad habits. I could see this being a cool one for some goth teen. And inside, it's got these kind of, let's say, high drama images. And she could play with those. And there are only two kinds of women, goddesses and doormats. So if you wanted to give a journal to a young girl, this would be a perfect one, because it's working towards helping her to be stronger and more clear of her boundaries. So there's probably 1,000 different kinds of journals out there. I've got, this is a grief journal. This is one if you were facilitating a group. So this would be for students if you had a grief group for any kind of grief. Let's say people who cancer, or people who've lost a loved one, or a group for widowers, something that's pretty sad, but the group is structured in some kind of way. Mm-hmm. You could probably, some of these, if you buy 50 of them at a time, you can get them at a better price. I've done that when I'm doing a workshop to say, it's going to be 50 people at this workshop. I want 52 of these kinds. So each of the facilitators has one. And this asks you questions, so you could say, in the grief group we'll be meeting 12 times over 12 weeks, 1 time a week for 2 hours, and each of you please use this journal. We'll walk our ways through it. This could be kind of like your workbook for the grief stuff. And this one has things like here in terms of your grief and mental health symptom tracker, and it's got the 1 to 5 across here of how often or how strongly you had certain feelings. And down here it's got your list of feelings. So here it has, I felt sad and hopeless, difficulty concentrating, feeling restless, feeling irritable, difficulty sleeping, and so on. So this is a beautiful journal that has a structured format. And I could see this being used in that, and there's others for that. Julia Cameron has The Artist's Way, which is a 12-week workshop-y kind of thing. There's also workbooks like this. I think The Courage to Heal is a famous one for incest or sexual abuse survivors. And it's about this thick, and you can add all these bits of your own self in there. So that, and this is, someone gave me this as a cover, as a gift for a journal. And there is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you. And that's a quote from Maya Angelou. So some people prefer to just use scraps of paper as their journal. You know, like just free, whenever they feel like it, to just add a sheet of paper in there, and that would be an example. Mm-hmm. Right, yes, exactly. Not structured and just piles of paper or boxes of paper. And that's totally perfect. For some people, totally perfect.
Yeah, that's what I have this for.
Right, and you just could put them in and put a clamp on it maybe at the end of the year, or whatever suits for you. There's no perfect way to do this, except the perfect way each person has to do it. That's all. This, I want to show you these because these are super tough. This is nice thick paper. This is called mixed media paper. And this is, it's sort of like construction paper a little bit, but even better. And these have these beautiful spiral edges here, so they lay flat. So you could use them in this format or this format, and they work really good if you're like, if you're just ripping away and gluing stuff in there and so on. And they come in a dozen different sizes, and they come, so they open like this. And those come from Michael's or places like that, art supply stores, and they're very, very affordable. I think this might be, and they have those, once a month kind of sales. You buy two, get two free or something. And so again, if you are a person facilitating these kind of workshops, I think this would be a perfect one for guys, because as I said, it's smaller, it's not too frou-frou, and you can write in it this way, and it lays nice and flat, and it's tough paper, right? So let's say if you're doing a group for young guys, it doesn't have a lot of space for writing, so it wouldn't be intimidating or overwhelming, and you could glue things in there, do art, do spray paint art. So those are examples of the formats. So now what I'm going to talk to you about is some different ways that you can engage. So I'll take this one out here. This is from a workshop I did, and they can come to look really pudgy and scraggly, and that's part of the magic and marvel of them, because life is like that. Life has things that stick out and that are everywhere. So the title of this workshop, this was about difficulties, challenges, shadows, hassles, duplicities, and pains I've encountered while doing research. So this workshop was with scholarly people like master's level students doing a project, writing projects. And so each person was given one of these, and what I did as the facilitator, because this would be, let's say, 1 3-hour workshop, one time, that's it. They arrive at the workshop, and you can see these cool words that you can buy already made. You can also print off dozens of words. And then inside, and you'll notice this format is a very common one in what I do. Carlene reminded us yesterday of the marvel of dictionaries. So I had dozens of dictionaries they could rip up and tear pages up. So the first words here are research, because that was the theme of the workshop, research. Diligent inquiry or examination in some field of knowledge undertaken to establish facts or principles, laborious or continued search after a truth. So we each ended up with this like little card to start our work. And then, as you can see, we've added, this is like the mess of it that you're weaving in bits. And I made more of these little envelopes with duct tape. And there's being a cactus, I like using the image of cactus a lot of times. There's a lot of things in life that are kind of prickly, but nonetheless they exist. They're organic, they're doing their prickly thing. There's cactuses everywhere you go. There's barbed wire everywhere you go, right? There will be things in life that are prickly, but nonetheless you have to continue. Nonetheless, you have to figure it out. So this little research part, the puzzle of research, the strands, band-aids, what hurts? So the metaphor becomes very important when you're doing a quick workshop like this, 3 hours. This is, I don't know if you can see this picture, this is what I feel like as a researcher. Can you see that cat? Oh my god, it's so cute. That's exactly what I feel like. What the hell? That's what it feels like when you're trying to do research. You kind of have these big eyes, and you're like, what's going on, right? So, this is an example I wish you to get from this, the messiness, and inviting people to be messy. So here's another example of that, and this is on fictions and decadent spectacular moments. Again, if you're working with a group of clients who've experienced a lot of suffering and trouble and trauma, we've used the little encapsulated idea before of your clients don't need you to teach them to suffer. They already know how to suffer. Just assume they know how to do that. They may not know how to play or frolic or have fun or dream or imagine or have enchantment. So this was a workshop on enchantment and play. And do I have it upside down? Because I don't want to have it upside down. Yeah. So again, your task as the facilitator is to cut out and have bunches of papers and pictures, and almost like a waitress in a big fancy restaurant. You know how you have the what is it called? There's all these trays. You go to an area in those big restaurants, and there's here's where the vegetables are, and there's 20 pots, and you scoop, and then you go, oh, buffet, that's where, and then there's the dessert buffet, and there's the meat buffet, and you go and fill your plate with whatever you want. So as the facilitator of these kind of workshops, it's my task and my helper's task. We go in and we put, oh, there's everything. There's a whole bunch of sparkly things. There's a bunch of rip and tear things. There's the table with the dictionaries. There's the table with the National Geographic magazine, so you can rip them all up. There's the table with strings and ribbons and band-aids and stuff. So having said that, you can kind of see the format here of how things can get put together. I very much like pockets because it builds in the assumption that things are always going to be in movement. They're always going to be fluid. So you make a comment about money in your life, let's say, right? Never enough money, never enough money. But maybe you'll come back one day and say, hey, today's a day where I kind of got enough money. Cool, right? So you can, this is the thread of a story. Where does the thread go? Where does it start? So you invite people to have questions. You use metaphors. You use images. All the stickies help people to get inspired and get with it. Stickies are, in a way, they're a cultural accoutrement of your time and place, your era, right? Around Halloween, there's a whole bunch of bats and ghosts and goblins. Around Christmas, there's wreaths and joy and snowmen and snowwomen and so on. So you invite people to use those stickies because people sometimes have lost their inner child. They've become kind of old and dry and worn out. So there's an example of if you wanted to do a workshop on positivity, hope, cheerfulness. Now for something completely different, the opposite of cheerfulness. While my husband had cancer, sepsis, a whole bunch of illnesses the last 5.5 years, there were lots of moments where I had no one to talk to, and I didn't want to talk to him because he would say things like he didn't want to be a burden, and I don't want to go and tell him, yeah, today was kind of a burdensome day. Today made me cry a lot. So I had this journal. This was a journal I kept in the basement, and this was just about me and how fragile I sometimes felt as his only caregiver. And it's got a razor blade here to show all the 1,001 little slices and cuts that we were having. And inside, sometimes there just weren't words. So this is where I wish you to get the idea of the emotions that are unspeakable. And you can see here, this is the absolute, almost unbearable dreariness sometimes of it all. And I just put in there threads and Band-Aids and...
There's something similar that they sell at like Books and Company and Kohl's, and it's called Wreck This Journal.
Wreck This Journal. I heard about
the exact
that.
same thing. Yeah, like they'll give you a page and they say like rip this out or rip this up or scratch this page up or cut into this page or whatever.
Precisely. Yeah. So for some people where they don't even know where to start, that would be the perfect kind of
transition?
Yeah,
or beginner?
A beginner way of working it.
Yeah.
And so this kind of here, this is all about, let's say, depression and hurt and, oh, I'm showing you it upside down again. Look at me, I'm so odd. And so if it was on grief and the unspeakables and unknowables of life. To be a human, sometimes there's things that you can't even speak about. You don't even have words. So this is a way, see, this is us when we were young and in love. This is where we started, my beautiful, big, tall, handsome. There he is. And so, of course, I'm always grieving that, right? Cancer invaded our relationship and our life. And so that is there to kind of remind me of where we started. And you can see all the different kinds of moments and emotions. And there's notes in here, all the bills that came from being ill. I put the bills in there and I spoke back to them. Like, die, pharmaceutical company, I fucking hate you. What do you mean it costs $200 and my insurance plan won't help? Right? So that's an unspeakable. Of course, the insurance company does what it does. And it doesn't matter if I phone them and yell and cry. They still do what they do. So what am I going to do with those feelings? I'm going to put hateful words in here. So these this is, I would call this a theme journal, in that the theme of grief, I only put grief in here. I put nothing else in here. So when I was feeling I had unspeakable words and feelings, I would go in here. No one else ever saw it. It's just my yuckies. This one is the dreams and fantasies and happy bits. And then other journals that this is, let's see, this is I think one I did with the kids. Oh, this is when you, I also have done journals like this when I'm going to something very special. So this is an example. I went to, I think it was an 8-day retreat in an Indigenous community to learn from Indigenous art therapists about using art therapy with Indigenous people. So I opened this journal the first day about the learning experience. So this is just from those days, what I learned, the handouts they gave us, the exercises they gave us, and the tasks they gave us. So this is, for example, here. This was an art experience we did, and I put it in the journal. So often as professionals, you're asked to go and do something, to learn something, and then your agency may say, when you come back, we want you to do a presentation on what you learned. Cool. So I was able, had I been, let's say if my agency had paid to send me to this, I would have been able to come back and say, well, day one, here's what we did, here's how we did it, here's why we did it, here's what I learned from it. Day two, here's what we did, here's why we did it, and so on. So this is the, this is, let's say, a project journal. If you know something's going to happen, people go on retreats, people go, if the three of us were going to Vancouver for a week, I might start a specific journal for that trip to kind of remember a memory journal from that special event.
Yeah, so if you're going for a conference, then each day you have different presenters, you might be able to record what each one said.
Exactly, and then 5 years later, you can still say, oh, no, I remember in June of 1997, this special theorist who talked about this thing, look, I know I wrote it down that day in that journal about that person. And it helps you get your money's worth too. You really learn more when you write it down. Any of you who've taken classes where you sat and you haven't taken notes and you didn't keep anything, and then a week later somebody says, what did you do? I sat there a lot.
We did things and stuff.
So I've done all kinds. I will just show you some other quick examples of some of these. So here's one. I think this is from the kids. When I did workshops with the kids, they would all get one of these. This kind of, again, this is from the dollar store. This is about $2, $3.
When you say kids, what is your age range, and at what point would you start introducing journaling?
Oh, it's a journaling workshop. So their parents have dropped them off at the Community Arts Council over here, and it's called Journaling for Kids. So the parents drop the kids off, and the kids might be in, and the workshop is from 9 in the morning till 12. The parents come and get the kids again. There might be about 6 to 10 kids in each group, and it's just that one time, right? So I'm just showing them, this is something you could play with in your life if you wished it. And I've kind of, as I've just done to say, you could get a theme journal, but I put it in a format more for kids. So we start with the kids. I ask them, we're going to trace out the first letter of their name, right? So that's how we start the journal. We decorate the outside, and what have I got here? So I've got S, and then put some words on it about you. So I put, I'm a teacher, and so on. And then there's also, as I've said before, we set up tables so that the kids can play with each different kind of resource. So there's where the markers are, there's where the pens are, there's where the stickies are, there's where the feathers are, there's where the, so these kind of things where you've already got it cut out. That's a teddy bear, and they could put that in, and we would talk about what makes you feel comforted, what makes you feel soothed, what makes you feel cuddled, right? And you try and put it in the words that match to the kids. And often when there's kids who are, let's say, uh, 8, there might be an 8-year-old kid, a 9-year-old kid, a 10-year-old kid, 11-year-old kid, and the ages, so kind of, oh, for the older kids you could do this, for the other younger kids you could do this, right? So again, as we've said in other videos, you always set situations up for people to succeed. You always set it up for them to choose what they want to do or not. And you always facilitate them to feel satisfied. So going around to them and say, oh, I'll help you trace out the S for your name. Or we've got stencils. And these are those, if you go to a dollar store or Michael's, you can get the alphabet, wooden alphabet letters, and to trace around the letter is really easy. Mm-hmm. They're big, they're about that thick, and you have the whole alphabet. So that's an example of what we did here. And having things like here, you know, this will be a home, the journal will be a home for your feelings and thoughts. So we have the word home that they stencil, and then there's a whole bunch of these kind of papers. So what do you want to be in your home? Well, for me, in my home, I'm busy, like a bee, right? Mm-hmm. And different ones that they could glue in. And they actually really love it. And we say things to them like, there's no way you could go wrong. And so here's some more. We played with different colors of paints that we stuck on. And what else did we do in here? Each workshop I did different things going by their ages. And so your sparkle has not gone unnoticed. So everybody would get that card and they tape it in. And then ask them, what does your sparkle look like? How do we know when you're in a sparkle moment? Or when are moments that you haven't felt sparkly, right? So they're open-ended questions that are always affirming and that will fit every kid, because every kid knows what you mean by the word sparkle. Or, you know, your cheerfulness, your positivity, right? You can't go too much wrong. And you're trying to make sure that every kid, and here's another one. We're going to put string to show the story of your life so far, right? So you're a little kid over here, and then you're like 2 years old, and then you're 6 years old, and then look, you're a big kid now, you're like 8, right? And then put words around and help them with the words if they're not able to do it. Or they could put unicorn stickies if they were just little, and you know, the story of their life so far. And what are some of your dreams for the story of your life in the future? And yeah, so just lots of stickies, lots of words. That's an example. Let me see if I got another one here. I've talked to you about doing the workshops with fathers and sons at Kikino. Mm-hmm. And this was the kind of thing. So we had lots of these kind of images here. These are feathers and images of fire and images of owls and nature, and they're stickies. So this is to talk about what does it mean to be Métis. And each of us talked about our culture. And again, you can see we used stencils. And I had cut out words such as I deserve joy and creativity. So everybody got that as a little piece of paper. I deserve joy and creativity. So what would it look like for you to get the joy you deserve? The little kid and the dad, right? Mm-hmm. My cultures are my strengths, right? So by putting the word S at the end, we were also giving everybody the righteous entitlement and affirmation of, it's okay to say I identify as Cree, but I also identify as a little bit Irish, and I identify a little bit of white, and okay. So we talked about what does it mean to have more than one culture inside us, and the kids understood that, and the dads understood that, because again, in many families now, here in Prince George and elsewhere, Mom might be Indigenous, and Dad is German, and Grandma is Chinese heritage, and so on, right? So we wanted to put out in the room that it's okay to be a little mixy-matchy. That's okay. Yeah, and so we just continued with this kind of format. And this was to put colors. So let's say if red is their Indigenous self, and blue is their settler self, and yellow is some other part of themselves. Like, what colors would you be? Right? You pick your color, the meaning of a color, and then what does that look like? And so again, this requires no technological skill, no brilliance. They could just riff. They could just play, the dads and the kids. And this is a part. This one here. This everybody loves this. We also came with these kind of things. Yesterday I was talking about Indigenous stories. The two art therapists, co-facilitators, the Indigenous people. We would bring these. We had talked about the turtle story and beaver story and bear stories. And this is from a children's coloring book, but it's also very, very visually attractive. So if we had 20 people participating, we would make sure we had 20 turtles in case all of them wanted a turtle, or all of them wanted a bear. And I'll draw your attention to this. This is another thing that we did. We bring our books outside and spray paint. That's cedar. Isn't that beautiful to look at visually? So we brought sprigs of cedar from my yard here, actually. And then you put a spritz of green and a spritz of gray outside. And in about 2 minutes it dries. And look at that interesting background that you've achieved. Cedar has a lot of meaning for some people, and I think everybody has some. When you think of the word cedar, you think of the forest or nature or walk. So again, it's a wide open imagery or metaphor or invitation for discussion. So when I said yesterday we did spray painting with everybody who might be interested, if you have 10 cans of spray paint, different colors, and you do these kind of layered images, it only takes a minute, and you've got something cool. And they can write on top of that. So, you in the mood for some anger?
Always.
That woke up a bit. So, again, everybody gets anger in their life. This is we're getting crude here now. We're getting harsh and serious. This is fuck you, mansplainer. I've been in the workforce since I was 15. Full-time and or part-time, and there's times when I've had maybe 4 part-time jobs and contracts and everything. So along the way, I've had some men who were bossy and who were assholes, right? But I can't say their names, and I can't get fired, and I can't get demoted, and I don't want to get arrested and all kinds of stuff. But I think it's totally honorable to say I've had some anger. So this for me, for a few years, I've been, I don't know, 7 years I've been playing in this one. And these are, you can buy these letters again at Michael's, and you can have, people can pick what they want to put on their cover. So this is anytime anybody at work makes me mad, I write about it in here. This is the really mad stuff. And it starts here with, I like the sound you make when you shut up. that's the men at work sometimes. I'll often refer to them as my reptilian overlords, right? And this is, I've done this as a workshop again for women who've had pressure in the workplace, right? And this is one of the examples I show. When I do a workshop, I always like to have at least a few pages of example to get people started. And I invite people with this workshop to imagine what if there was a creature in the world that you could magically become in those moments, what would that be? And for me, it was a Doberman. And we've all heard the expression to say an angry woman is a bitch. And a bitch, if you look it up, is one of the meanings is a female dog. So I want to be, and you'll see I got little Doberman dogs here now on all my pages. And what I want to be is when that kind of man is coming towards me, I want to be able to just look at his face, and I want him to feel the fury, and I want him to change his mind and go away, right? So kind of practicing as a playfulness with the group, whatever their animal is, what would be the sound that animal would make? And in my case, it's something like, right? So kind of venting your rage and then putting it in here. And there's even, I believe somewhere, there. This is what I want to grow up and look like. Before I retire, I want to have one full day where I look like this. And I get finally my chance when I'm 65 years old and it's a few weeks before I retire. And then there'll be some mansplainer who comes along and tells me how to do my job or how to think about the issues that I've been researching for 40 years and living since the day I got born. And it's like, I dare you. You're gonna get it for everybody. Back the fuck away. So, I'm being a bit playful about this, and I think that's wholesome again. And I want to also be like a superwoman. And I put words in here and quotes that help me when I'm mad. And this is, I've been playing with this one for years, and you can see I've left space for the remaining 5 years of my life in the workforce, because I anticipate there will be more moments like that. This is, I feel this is one of the best workshops I get to do, because everybody has pressure in the workplace. There's nobody who could say, I've been in the workforce for 40 years and I've never had an uncomfortable moment, or no, I've never had anyone give me pressure. We've all had that. And what the workforce demands from us is that we kind of swallow that anger and process it, and ideally that we find a way to express our wishes that does create win-win situations, that creates effective boundaries and limits, that creates opportunities for everybody to get the work done without anybody getting fired, right? The workplace, if you think of it, 60 or 200 or 5,000 people all being hired to get the work done, but we may not like each other. That's okay. But you got to figure out how to manage your stress. So I've really enjoyed doing those workshops on mansplainers, and it's always been women. But I offer to you that, of course, men have had similar kinds of stresses and anguish in the workplace. They also have their reptilian overlords and their angst and their hurt. What else can I tell you? Well, here's another thing I can tell you. Similar to Carlene saying that she does individual pages and then puts them in her purple envelope there. This is another way you can do journaling too. You can cut cards for people, and then they could just make these cards that they put in a box. I have two boxes that are filled with these kind of cards, and they could just be quotes that are inspirational. They could have, drama, the no drama zone, right? This can also be kind of fun for people who they get Christmas cards, birthday cards, anniversary cards, and they don't want to throw them away, but you can't keep them forever either. Your house gets too full. Or after your wedding, let's say if you ended up getting 200 notes and cards and images from your wedding, you could kind of make your wedding box and cut the pictures and cards and make them all together and save them in that way. Yeah. So that's, I've done workshops too offering that to people. You could do a journal, or we could do these boxes, and I come with boxes. Again, you can get them for like $2 from Michael's, and then cut a stack of cards that could be in there. Where that can be kind of nice too is people who, let's say youth in group homes and so on, they don't want to have a lot of heavy baggage to carry with them to wherever they go next. And these kind of cards can be very helpful. I use my boxes of cards sometimes to pull out images to then journal about. So my maternal grandparents, just to give an example of that, my maternal grandparents are from Scotland, and I've never been to Scotland, but I've had books and pictures from Scotland, and this, for me, is one of the most beautiful images of the rock that finally split. I think that's very profound. Sometimes there's issues in your life that you work on and work on and work on, and you don't feel like you're making progress, but maybe one day, suddenly, the situation opens up. Right? So I might pull this out now and then and look at it, and then speak to it in my journal. So, what else can I tell you? I've got all kinds of theme journals. I've got the Poet's Notebook. Again, if you typed in on Google or Amazon, this is the Poet's Notebook, and this is specific quotes from specific. Destiny likes this one. It has music in the background to go with it. These are beautiful quotes from amazing poets, and then you can journal on them. So I would invite you, whatever works for you, it'll pass. I hope. I would invite you, even if you don't think it's your thing or your way, give yourself permission to be a bit of a child, whether you're a child with a tantrum, a child with deep, quiet thoughts. Buy some of this stuff or find some of this stuff. It doesn't have to be a big financial investment. Go to the dollar store. For $2 you get a box of crayons. For $5 you can get just an open kind of journal, something like this with just pages and notebook. And just putter with it. Those moments when it seems impossible, or those moments that you never want to forget, those moments where you need to work something out. The most classic, of course, is any decision you need to make. People will say, oh, I made a list of all the good things, and I made a list of the bad things of what could. Should I buy this car? Here's a list of the reasons.
Like the pros and cons?
Pros and cons. We've all seen that.
Venn diagrams.
Pros and cons, or diagrams of if this, then that. If this, then that. Mm-hmm. And you can do that in a journal. Some people like to have a little journal that they do on their birthday. So they don't, lots and lots of effort, but every birthday to sit down that night or that day and write about the last year that's gone by. What were the 3 best things that happened? The 3 worst things? What do you dream will be the 3 best things? And what do you worry will be the 3 worst things in the next year? So some people use them for event journals, right? I find humans are intrinsically creative. We want to express ourselves. We want to contain and collect our emotions, our memories somewhere. And a journal is a perfect place to do it, or a scrapbook, or a scrap box, or a scrap pouch. There's no wrong way to do it, and you are righteously entitled to do it. So if the people around you say, why are you spending so much time journaling? You say, because I want to.
Why are you spending so much time micromanaging what I do?
Right, exactly. Mind your own self, right? It's a place that you are entitled to. It's not... No one else has the right to tell you you shouldn't have more pens, or you're 60 years old. Why are you buying stickies? 'Cause I want to, and 'cause it's my money and I'm buying stickies, right? Because if I wasn't buying stickies, I might have to buy a brick and hit you with it. Be glad I buy stickies.
My dictionary is being used for my journal, but if you keep this up, it's going to be used on you.
That's right. That's right. It can be a space where you process and become a better person. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you, right? I don't want people to think I'm crazy. I'm just writing all my crazy thoughts. All humans have crazy thoughts. All humans have anger. All humans have grief. All humans have moments that were inexplicable.
And unrational.
And irrational. They're just
not linear.
Or working on your dreams. That's another famous one. People keep something beside their bed. I'll always encourage clients to do that. If you're having dreams that are repeating, or you're having nightmares that are upsetting you, or you can't sleep, even if you just had something like this with some pens, and it's bothering your mind, you turn the light on, write what it is, write it, scribble it, doodle it, whatever it is, and then try again to go back to sleep. And I will suggest to you that most people will find that pretty helpful. It's a cleanser. It's kind of like give your brain a mop, a wipe, and put it in the journal. So thank you so much for sharing this episode with me today on creativity, on journaling. And thank you again, Tuba and Carlene, for being my witnesses and comrades in all this. Yay!